Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Steve Palazzolo stealing hosting duties from Mike Renner right here. I'm with Sam Monson. It's like the gang is back together, Sam. Just you and I right now.
And we're on location. We're not at PFF HQ. We are in New York City in the middle of a snowstorm in Sports Illustrated's fancy building.
But they also, despite the big fancy building, have a nook.
They do.
A small nook. So I kind of feel at home. I thought it was going to be a big fancy podcast room that they set us up in, but it's very nookish.
It is. So they have this giant fancy building where pretty much everywhere you look, it is vastly more impressive than PFF HQ. I'm talking scanners to get in, x-rays to send your bag through before you even get into the building proper.
So much good food.
Touchscreen elevators. Level. You can't even press the button. It's got to be touchscreen to get to where you want to go.
It's big time.
And then we get to our podcast nook that they're setting us up in, and it is a small room with sound deadening stuff stapled together. This is the kind of thing we can relate to. This is what
making
we're
us feel at home. So we appreciate that. We appreciate that about SI. Big business with making the little guys feel comfortable right here. We are here though. We're doing some draft shows. We're going to be doing 8 draft shows with these guys over the next few weeks. So please, keep your eyes peeled for that. That should be fun. And it's mock draft day, Sam, or mock draft a week. I dropped a mock draft this week, so it's time for. It's usually multiple people, but you can trash me on it.
Was it the worst one I've ever seen?
Yes, I do kind of want to go back and read the mean tweets that I've gotten and how bad it is, how bad the mock draft is, how off it is. I don't know what a good mock draft looks like, but I know that mine's bad and maybe the worst ever.
Well, that's the thing. I'm inclined to judge a mock on how many people think it's terrible. The more, the better.
Yeah. Some of the few tweets that when PFF posted it from the main account, it was a lot of hate. So I'm feeling good about this mock. I think it was good in a bad way. So
it's also probably important to say there are 2 types of mock draft.
Right.
There's the guys that are trying to predict what is going to happen on draft night. The guys with the inside sources. I'm hearing X is rising. He's going to go number 5. And there's
and those, by the way, are like 8% accurate.
Oh yeah, those are ridiculous. Or there's the guys like us who have done the player evaluation and are saying, if we were the GM for every NFL team, this is what we would do at each pick in the first round and beyond.
Right. It's a player evaluation exercise.
Yeah.
More than anything, especially for us.
So when we have a guy who everyone else thinks is a first rounder and he doesn't appear in our mock draft, it's not that we think he's going to go in the 3rd. It's that we're telling you this guy is not good enough to go in the first round. Therefore, he does not appear in our mock draft.
Yeah, it gets you thinking
a little bit.
Gets you thinking. So there's a lot of different ways that we could slice this. If you guys have been following along, we've got a bunch of quick-hitting videos and some YouTube videos describing what would the Cleveland Browns do? What would we do with 1 and 4? What would some of these other teams do in the top 10? So you want to just roll through it a little bit and you correct me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And where you disagree.
The boss, Chris Collinsworth, was big on me ripping apart your mock. So let's give it a shot.
Good luck, because it's near perfect. It's near perfect because people hate it. All right, so number 1 in the mock. Oh, do we count down at 32? No, of course not.
No.
Number 1 in the mock draft. I'm sticking with Baker Mayfield for the Cleveland Browns. It's been like this for all 3 mocks. This is mock draft 3. We're sticking with Baker Mayfield, and unless he has to run from the cops again, I anticipate this being the pick for me all the way through.
Yeah, and this is the one that I can't hate. It's always a bad note to start on when I'm trying to rip apart your mock draft, and number 1 is Baker Mayfield, because that is going to be the PFF company line.
I know your soft spot.
There's no way around it. Any way you slice the numbers, Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback available in this draft. There is no conceivable way of carving up either the tape or the statistics or the grading that doesn't make him head and shoulders the best quarterback in this class. And that's even when you factor in the stuff that people criticize about that, which is legitimate. The fact that Oklahoma offense does generate him some free yardage, some easy plays. 20%, I think, more or less, of his pass attempts were screens of some kind, whether it's bubble screens, that kind of thing. But even if you factor in that, he is so far ahead of the rest of the pack that the amount you ding him for that is not enough to overcome the amount he is ahead of everybody else.
No, I'm with you on that. We've tried. I've looked for excuses against Baker over the last few years. Looked as hard as I can, and always comes out on top, like you said. So I think we've beat that drum quite a bit. Number 2, and I know this is where we've discussed quarterbacks quite a bit, and I know that you're not as high on Sam Darnold as I am, but I went with Sam Darnold at number 2 for the New York Giants. I just think his high-end potential is so good. I wrote it up on the site. When you look at his quality plays, the way he throws guys open in the middle of the field, I understand there were some issues with fumbles and turnovers last year. When I look at him, I always say I don't think that's a part of his DNA. I think it was more of a slump. Whereas when we get to Josh Rosen, I feel like the turnover stuff is a bit more part of his DNA and his natural aggressiveness. So when I'm trying to sort through Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen, I like the fact that I don't think Darnold's going to be a turnover machine at the next level, and I like the way he makes plays outside of structure. So I think that's what kind of separates those two guys.
What was the quote on Sam Darnold? Bad face, loopy motion.
Was that the
anonymous scout quote?
Not our anonymous scout. No. That was another anonymous scout.
A legitimate anonymous scout quote was something like, "Bad face, loopy motion, overrated."
We need to get anonymous scout back here, maybe to refute those claims,
or
back them up.
Yeah,
or maybe
elaborate on them.
Explain this bad face to me.
I mean, that was one of the most ludicrous summations of a player I've ever seen. Bad face. I mean, that's straight out of the Moneyball farce of the old
straight
school,
from the script.
Yeah, of the old school scouts being in the room, being made to look ridiculous on screen because they come out with things like bad face, girlfriend's a 6, whatever.
Yeah, can't sell blue jeans type of guy.
That was the Sam Darnold thing. Yeah, he's in the next tier of quarterbacks to me. This group is Baker Mayfield, head and shoulders above anybody else, and then I think the next few guys are kind of interchangeable. It's a case of there's warts on all of them, and it's a case of which guy, either the warts don't bother you as much, or which guy has the you guys love so much.
Dun dun dun. Come on, Sam. Mike's gonna be so mad at you.
I know, but he's not here now.
When he hears that,
I want.
I'm anti too. A little bit.
You don't scare me. Which guy has enough that you're prepared to overlook the flaws? So you like Darnold more. I can see it. I like Rosen more, but I think those two guys are the next two somewhere in this top 5.
All right, so number 3 is where we start to get into worst mock draft territory.
Yes.
Okay, and for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
I'm going Maurice Hurst from Michigan, and with the caveat, of course, we don't know what happened at the combine. He essentially gets sent home with an undisclosed heart issue. Now, the star Lotalele, this happened to him a few years ago, and it was really nothing. It didn't really affect his draft stock. It wasn't a big deal. Until I have more information, I'm going to carry on as is with Maurice Hurst. Now, even when I carry on as is, because he's not a consensus top 5 or top 10 type of guy, people question this thing. Where's Saquon Barkley? Where are these big names we're hearing about? But we've been pounding the table for Maurice Hurst because he's the best interior disruptor in this draft. It's a draft that doesn't have a lot of interior disruptors. He did weigh in at 290 before the heart issue, where he was listed at 280, and it was still one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's undersized, but when you get to that 290 range, it does help a little bit. That is where Aaron Donald and Grady Jarrett and some of these other interior disruptors live from a weight standpoint. And the fact that he's got that low pad level and good burst and then incredible on-field production these last 3 years for Hurst, I think he's underrated in this draft, and we'll continue to pound the table for him as a top 5, top 10 type of pick until we hear more on the heart stuff. So this is the first place where I think fans were questioning my sanity and sobriety, really.
Yes.
During this draft.
I think the heart thing is fair enough. Look, that at the moment that could be anything. It could be a career-ending disaster, or it could be he had a heart murmur or something, some kind of arrhythmical beat, and there's nothing to it. Once they get it checked out, he's good. They just don't want to send him through a battery of athletic drills while they don't know quite what's going on with his heart, which is fair enough. So I think it's fine to say right now we don't factor that in until we find out more. I love the guys that are saying you need to drop him because he got sent home for a heart problem. Like, okay, how much is the appropriate amount to drop a guy for that?
Well, I considered this too because I said I could drop him to 15 to make a point, but if I would have taken him at 15, and I think he's that good, I probably would have taken him at 3. That is just pure guesswork. You either drop him out completely, or you make it a point that, hey, we're going to pound the table for him as a great player. So for now, we will.
Yeah.
Until we know more.
I agree that the size thing, though, is almost irrelevant, especially at 290. I mean, Grady Jarrett is listed at 291. Aaron Donald is 284.
Even if he was 280, it'd probably be irrelevant. But the 290 thing helps at least a little bit.
Geno Atkins and Gerald McCoy are both basically 300 on the nose. So yeah, I think if you're at 290, it's completely irrelevant. Even if you were at 280, I think the kind of rise of guys like Aaron Donald is making you say, we need to be looking past that at this point. But yeah, I think 290 should essentially assuage the concerns of anybody that had a problem with his size. And at that point, you're looking at this tape, and it is incredible. When you start literally grading it play by play, he is significantly better, I think, than most people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, and just to recap his career real quick, was part of a defensive line rotation over the last few years where he was the top guy on this loaded Michigan D-line, and then last year plays a lot more snaps. The production stays high. It's similar to Jonathan Allen for us from a production standpoint, except Hurst has 3 years of it, where Allen had the 2. We had Allen at number 2 on our draft board last year at this time before his medical issues popped up.
And he ticks the box in terms of, one of the things we're learning about our grading is if you are at the real extremes of it at the top end, those are the guys that seem to have no problem hitting the ground running in the NFL.
Especially on defensive line.
Yes. And he ticks that box. He is of the category of this guy's grade is almost too good for him not to be successful at the NFL level.
Yeah, I mean, there are other positions we know not to focus on it as much, but D-line we've had pretty good success. I don't want to go through every pick, but I'll let you pick out some of the flaws. But I go Derwin James at 4 to the Cleveland Browns. The short deal there is I think Derwin is just a special defensive player that can do it all. Showed up at the combine from an athleticism standpoint. And I like him over Minkah Fitzpatrick as far as what he can do from a versatility standpoint. And Saquon Barkley's name has not come up yet. It will be in a few picks. The trouble I had going through this whole thing was taking defensive playmakers. First off, quarterbacks versus Saquon's a no-brainer. Give me if there's a chance the quarterback could become a top 15 NFL quarterback, I'm taking him. We're sticking with that. The positional value of running back. Go listen to our previous podcast where we've talked about it. Go listen to the PFF forecast where they've talked plenty about running back value. But now I'm having trouble putting Barkley over defensive playmakers like a Derwin James.
I think that's fair. Also, the hype train around Saquon at the moment is out of control. I mean, it was always going to do that when he blew up the combine, as everybody expected. But some of the stuff that is coming out is insane. The idea that he is the best running back prospect in the last 25 years, or he is
of the next 10 years, according to one of my mentions on Twitter, that he's the best of the next 10 years. You got to get him right now.
Okay, and also that one team apparently had him with a perfect grade as a prospect.
That feels a little extreme.
Both those seem ridiculous. He's not. I mean, 25 years takes you back a long way. And even in just the last few years, you got to go past guys like Zeke Elliott, who is, I think, probably a better prospect than Saquon Barkley, albeit a marginally less athletic one. He is a very good running back, but the idea that you could put on his tape, come out of it at the end and say, yep, there are no flaws there. This is the perfect running back, the perfect prospect. That is nuts. I think he's a valuable, impactful playmaker, but I can easily see a good argument for not putting him in the first couple of picks.
So I go number 5, Denver Broncos, Josh Rosen.
Okay.
The caveat to all of this is I do think free agency, some quarterbacks land a few places here. So in my world, I think Rosen drops a little bit. My next pick might not ever happen if the shoe drops in free agency. The New York Jets taking Lamar Jackson, who's in the 20s on our draft board, but me playing GM is saying I need a quarterback this badly. I know that I have to change my offense to kind of fit his skill set a little bit. We've talked about this quite a bit, but I'd be willing to take that risk, I think, on Lamar. I don't feel as comfortable with him as I do with, say, Rosen, Darnold, or Baker at the top.
Yeah, this is the first one that I think is just outright crazy.
Thank you.
I think that Lamar Jackson can play quarterback in the NFL. I don't think you need to move him to wide receiver or anything crazy. But the idea that you would pick a guy that is that flawed as a quarterback at number 6 is nuts. I think you'll probably dodge the bullet anyway because I'm almost certain the Jets are going to go after a free agent quarterback pretty hard. They make the most sense to me for Kirk Cousins and always have. Like we said this morning, I'm still not buying this Minnesota Vikings throwing all of the money at Kirk Cousins. I think the Jets have the same kind of money to play with and a far greater desire to get a quarterback. They're the team that makes the most sense to go after Cousins. So at that point, they're not going to be looking at QB at 6 anyway. And if they are, I just don't see how it can be Lamar Jackson.
So this will be my cop-out because I have 6 quarterbacks going in the first round. But next time I do a mock, free agency will have happened. Maybe the Broncos have a QB, the Jets have a QB, maybe the Cardinals have a QB, and some of these things
You're going to lose a couple of them anyway.
Yeah, so hopefully that shakes it up a little bit. Number 7, I went Saquon Barkley. I think that was fine. I think it was a good fit for Tampa Bay now in the building around Jameis Winston. With speed guys like Deshaun Jackson, Mike Evans being your big receiver, O.J. Howard at tight end, and now you've got Saquon Barkley. Of course, Chris Godwin really breaking out at wide receiver too. Start surrounding Jameis with those weapons, Sam.
Yeah.
Good things will happen.
Well, he is the kind of back they wanted, or the high-level Doug Martin. You get every 3 years you got a good Doug Martin version.
Maybe Barkley could do that every year.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley. They're very different backs, but in terms of what they do, they're both quality runners and receivers. They're dynamic weapons that can be out there for 3 downs. In that capacity, I think they're similar types of players. So it makes sense from that point of view. Where is Quentin Nelson? Why is he not in the top 5, Steve? Everybody's putting him there.
Oh, another positional value thing. So I need to find a way to convey the message that I love Saquon Barkley. I love Quentin Nelson like everyone else does. And they may end up being the two best players in this entire draft. But a guard and a running back, it's the positional value thing. So when I go Bears at 8, I considered Quentin Nelson, especially after they dropped Josh Sitton. But I went Josh Jackson at corner, higher value player. Harold Landry on the edge to the Niners. Bradley Chubb on the edge to the Oakland Raiders. And then finally, if there was a perfect fit for Quentin Nelson in this draft, it's probably the Miami Dolphins, who have struggled with guard play for years now. And I think that's a good fit for this generational guard like Quentin Nelson.
So I think you get out of control a little bit when it comes to positional value. I get the idea that you want to hit quarterback changes everything. So park quarterback to one side for a minute.
This is my buzzword this spring.
Quarterback is like a binary thing. If you do not have a quarterback, you need to take a quarterback the earliest possible opportunity.
Right.
So it changes everything. But outside of quarterback, there are definitely positions with dramatically different values. But I think you also need to factor in the fact that the draft is such an overall crapshoot anyway, that simply securing a player that hits almost outweighs any kind of positional value attached to it.
No, so it's fair. This is where the whole safest prospect type of thing, even if it is at guard.
And the comp I made about it was, if I told you that Marshall Yanda could only play guard and you could draft him now in the draft, knowing the kind of player that he is, a certain all-pro guard, how high would you take him? And you definitely take him in the top 5.
Yeah, I think
so. The fact that he's
top 10.
You take him in the top 5. Come on.
No, because you're weighing that against.
If you didn't need a quarterback, you would take Marshall Yanda in the top 5.
I think it depends on how your roster is constructed. But let's say you have a cornerback. Let's say you have a Jalen Ramsey type cornerback who, when we were evaluating him a couple years ago, said at worst he's a really good slot / safety. At best, he's a top 3 corner. And maybe there's only a 75% chance that he gets to that top 3 corner status, or 50% chance even, versus 100% certainty that you have Marshall Yanda.
Yeah.
I still think going for the high value Jalen Ramsey pick.
But you need 5 of those guys to keep Marshall Yanda out of the top 5.
Yeah, but when you start looking at maybe high end in any given draft, a high end edge defender, a high end corner, and of course we know that quarterbacks are going to be in that mix as well, then that's what pushes guards down to sometimes 11.
I'm just saying, if you can be sure you're getting that guy, and teams are always certain about every guy they're drafting, it doesn't matter that he's only a guard. You take that guy high, you take him in the top 10, you take him in the top 5 if you need to. I'm fine with it.
I love Quentin Nelson. We've debated whether or not he should move to tackle. If he goes to Miami, perfectly fine with him going to guard, shoring up one of those positions that has been horrible for them along the way. All right, where else do you disagree? By the way, we'll get the PFF forecast guys to even run more numbers for us, because that's what they do.
They do.
On the guard value. I asked them a very specific question last week, which I believe they answered on their most recent podcast, about Quentin Nelson and pancakes. So I suggest you get over there to the PFF Forecast. It is the newest PFF podcast. Go check it out anywhere you guys are listening to us or wherever you guys listen to podcasts. Check out the PFF Forecast, and they'll answer my question about Quentin Nelson and pancakes.
Nice.
And I haven't heard it yet. I can't wait.
So I like the pick. I don't like how far he slipped. I think Roquan Smith from Georgia, you've got him going 14 to the Green Bay Packers. Roquan Smith is a top 10 player, and you've been disputing this all the way through this process, again, because of your obsession with positional value.
No, because I think linebacker is of great positional value if you're really good at it.
Well, then it's even more wrong.
He's at 14. What's wrong with that?
It's too low.
Who would you put him over?
Mike McGlinchey?
Oh, man. I don't know. I know the Bengals are so weak at tackle. I put McGlinchey at 12.
Never draft from need, Steve.
Oh, man. Now you're killing me. You're using my own life against me. I'm gonna redo my mock and move Actually, they could use Roquan too.
There you go.
In Cincinnati.
See,
best player available.
The Bears could use him. They've got some linebacker issues too.
You've scouted Josh Jackson pretty closely. Him versus, I think they're both similar prospects. I like Josh Jackson at corner as a tiebreaker.
No, I can't hate that. I mean, he would be an option there.
All right, 15, Arizona Cardinals, Denzel Ward. I really liked that pick, pairing him with Patrick Peterson.
Yeah.
In their man-heavy scheme. Now you have Patrick Peterson, who already matches up against top receivers. He can match up against the big receiver, Denzel Ward. I think his value as a shorter corner, and we've raved about his speed and quickness quite a bit on here. You pair him against the better route runner. I think you've got so much versatility now in that Cardinals defense.
Yeah, assuming the Cardinals have answered their quarterback situation at that stage. Otherwise, again, QB, the binary problem. If they don't have one, they got to take one at 15.
Yeah, I get it. I had reasons for why I went with Mason Rudolph where I did.
Oh, yeah?
A little bit lower. I have reasons.
Okay.
We'll get there. Anything else? So we got 16, Michael Gallup, wide receiver to the Ravens. It's one of the first picks I don't love because I don't love this wide receiver class.
Pretty rich.
I forced it a little bit with Gallup. I like him as a player. Like him a lot. Ran a 4.5, which I think was expected at the combine, but he knows how to get open.
So I know this is a what you would do versus what is going to happen thing.
Yeah.
But do you envisage there is any scenario at which the Seahawks would take Connor Williams at number 18?
If he's available?
Yes.
Why would they not do it?
Because this is the Seattle Seahawks who have been employing defensive tackles and,
they said it's
athletes.
They want new types of offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And I figure Connor Williams is a good offensive lineman that maybe would help them turn the corner.
Okay.
From bad offensive lineman to good offensive lineman.
It's definitely the way you should be looking.
I'm not of the mind that Seattle must draft an offensive lineman just because their offensive line is terrible. I think they're also at a point where their roster has kind of taken a step back these last couple of years, and they're in position to reload on the edge and reload all over the roster, really. So
they made a huge turnaround with that offensive line by trading for Dwayne Brown. Like the numbers in terms of pressures allowed and pressure rate allowed from the moment Dwayne Brown arrived is night and day. Like he alone just made an incredible difference to that offensive line. They literally went from basically the worst left tackle situation in the NFL to a guy who's pretty good.
Right.
And it was monstrous for that unit.
Yeah, and I think if you did add a Connor Williams, maybe you can move a Fetty back inside, Ethan Pochich, who I think still has some potential, some room to improve even. I think some pieces are starting to fall into place if you get another good name in there, which is why I did it. Went with your boy Rashad Penny.
Oh, I love this.
At 20, Detroit Lions. Why do you love? This was one of those where I kind of get a little bit of feedback around the office, and this was one of the ones that you did really like quite a bit.
Yeah,
why is that?
I love this pick. For a start, there's been debate, I think, over the past few years about whether the Lions just simply haven't been able to find a running back. They keep taking these guys and they just end up all as scat backs, or whether this is a team that genuinely, philosophically, has no interest in having a powerful every down ball carrier.
Right.
And all they want is a stable of running backs that are factors in the passing game, because all the metrics, all the advanced stuff says that essentially passing is the way you should be going. And for the Lions to want the ball in their star player Matthew Stafford's hands every single down is actually philosophically the right kind of idea. So this at least I think would answer once and for all is this a case of the Lions not being able to find backs, or do they just not want that type of back? And I think they could do that with Rashad Penny without losing things in the pass game. I think he can be a big factor as a receiver in the passing game, albeit less so as a pass protector, but he'll work on it.
Yes, he does need some work. They just have him running routes.
Yeah, that's why I think he can come in. He can be that
five-man protection.
Be a receiving back in that offense, and we know that he's got the kind of quality to carry the ball between the tackles in a way Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah don't seem to be able to. So I really like this pick. Just in terms of Penny, I think when you put on the tape, the more I watch of him, the more I think there is a genuine, decent chance that he could be the best running back in this class. He does everything well, with the exception of pass blocking. And just looks like a monster.
Number 2 elusive rating in the entire draft class.
180 tackles last year.
Yeah, 128.6 elusive rating. Your baby there that you made back in the day. The creator of elusive rating.
Founder of elusive rating.
So if you guys have any elusive rating complaints, please send them all to @PFF_Sam.
There are no complaints. That's the best metric we do.
Those numbers and the draft class rankings, all a part of our PFF draft guide, which dropped last week. If you guys have Edge or Elite, go check it out in your dashboard if you haven't yet. If you haven't signed up with Edge or Elite, what are you waiting for? Go check it out. The draft guide is only a part of both of those packages. You get our QB annual. You get our free agency guide, which, it's free agent time right now, and all sorts of other goodies. Go and check it out. All right, it's Mason Rudolph time. I put him to the Buffalo Bills at 21. And so Rudolph's a guy that's been really productive. You watch him throw for throw, and it just makes you pull your hair out sometimes because it's like NFL throw here, it's duck there, and it's just not consistent. I think I've come around to the fact that I like Rudolph, but I might only like him if I'm the Bills and I've got 2 picks in the first round to play with.
So
I'm mitigating my
So you only have him
risk.
going here in the first round of the Bills because they've got a second shot at the first round pick in case they screw it up.
That's correct.
Okay.
And now you add Dallas Goedert with the other pick, and who, the more you watch him and his size, catch radius, athleticism, unbelievable work after the catch at 6'5", 255 pounds. He looks like an absolute mismatch weapon at the next level. You start pair him with Mason Rudolph. I think you got a nice start for that Bills offense.
I don't know if there's any player that has moved around in terms of our evaluation on him as much as Mason Rudolph has through this process of scouting guys.
I think that's what the NFL's doing too, because I've heard first round for him. I've heard third or fourth round for him as well.
Well, I mean, you hear it all the time, and people ask, how does that happen? Because these guys haven't thrown a ball in anger in a couple of months. Nothing has changed for them on the field from when you started this to when you finished. But for us, at least, we've graded all these throws throughout college, but we need to go back and look at exactly how that grade was comprised, how it was made up. You've added this advanced QB charting stuff to it, so more in-depth information that we didn't have before.
Right. That's where he was a little bit lower than I expected.
Yeah.
When we actually went throw for throw, and again, we've already graded the throws. Now we're adding very specific ball location. Did he hit guys in stride? Did he leave it too far behind? All those types of things. And he was a little bit lower than I expected.
So I think we started off thinking, are we undervaluing this guy? Does he deserve to be in the conversation with the top QBs, with the Josh Rosens and the Sam Darnolds? And we kind of started moving him up there. The grading suggested that, yeah, maybe he does. And we start adding this advanced QB data, and you're saying, yeah, but he's not in that group when it comes to this stuff. And you start watching some of these throws, and you look at how many of them were those wide receivers one-on-one on the outside. How there's something with his delivery that's just funky for a guy.
The short game too. So this was always a concern for us. And Zach Robinson, our QB guy, is actually training Rudolph. We could probably try to get his thoughts at some point. But even Zach and I, when we've discussed in the past, it's that short area game, the catch and throw stuff. Maybe it's smaller hands. That's just not. That's maybe a part of that. But there's a few areas where he's just lacking a little bit.
And for a big, strong guy, it just doesn't translate to this phenomenal arm and phenomenal athlete on the field in a way it does for a guy like Josh Allen. So yeah, I think he started off kind of moving up our board, and it's now heading in the opposite direction to the point where you've only got him in the first round if a team has a second shot at taking the first round pick.
You never know how my mind works.
It's amazing
when I'm putting this mock draft together.
For all of us, it's a treat.
Bunch of offensive linemen coming off the board, some unexciting but I think important picks. A guy like Frank Ragnow, maybe to the Rams to solidify that center position. Will Hernandez maybe just, step in, replace Andrew Norwell in Carolina. What are your thoughts on Leighton Vander Esch from Boise State? Big, tall, rangy linebacker who's lived up to some of the combine hype.
I mean, we talked about it on the Combine Review podcast that quietly he is an athletic freak. I guess some people were pointing that out, but when you look at the linebacker group, Roquan Smith is the speedy coverage specialist. Tremaine Edmonds is the guy that's getting the hype for just being a physical freak, an absolute monster, ludicrous numbers. But Leighton Vander Esch basically matched him across the board, is the same size, actually has a few pounds on him, an inch shorter. He is basically every bit the physical freak that Edmonds is. Just isn't getting that same level of hype, I think, for that. But he may be a better linebacker. When you look at them play on the field, I think Edmonds is all about the potential. Need a bell dinging for these.
We'll get Mike Quinn, the new Mike. Get him throwing some sound effects in there.
Yeah. But Vander Esch actually, I think, probably has better tape and has been more productive, albeit just for that 1 year, really. I like him in the first round. I think he's going to be a quality player for several of these teams in terms of options late in the first round.
Would be a much-needed added middle-of-the-field presence to that Titans defense. Next pick at 26, I get the Falcons going Isaiah Wynn at guard. Falcons are always one of those tough teams, even though I'm a best player available guy, Sam. I do love when need and value match up. So drafting for them all the time, sometimes difficult, because I give them a third corner, or I give them an extra wide receiver, and all their fans complain. There'll be no complaints from Falcons fans. We filled their one big need at guard with a guy named Isaiah Wynn that we love, dominated at the Senior Bowl, a tackle to guard conversion type of guy because he's a little short, but technically sound and probably one of the better guard prospects in this draft.
Yeah, I'm looking for this tweet of yours so that I could quote it word for word, but I'm just going to have to try and ad-lib it, remember it. You said when it comes to offensive linemen, guard/tackle debate, let them fail first at tackle. And here you are taking a left tackle and making him play guard for the Falcons. What's with that, Steve?
Well, that's just a team fit thing. He's not going to play over Jake Matthews or Ryan Schrader right now.
So put him somewhere else. Let him succeed at tackle.
He's also one of the few guys when Mr. Renner was scouting him, and he's all on board with my theory of, let a guy fail at tackle first, and Mike was like, maybe not with Wynn. Maybe he's still like a little bit below that threshold. So there are some question marks about his ability to stay there. But if you draft it to the right team that needs a guard, boom, you're at guard. I think two interesting picks at 27 and 28. At 27 for the Saints, I went Marcus Davenport out of UTSA. He's another one of those guys where I feel like I started the hype. We started the hype on him. I was the first one to have him as a first rounder, if I can remember back to the mock. I'll take credit for his rise.
We'll give it to you.
Now he's a top 10, top 15 hype guy. And it's like, all right, hold on just a minute. He's almost 6'6", powerful, athletic. I love so much about him, but he's not a finished product yet. And that scares me a little bit in the top 10 to 15 range. I love it for the Saints, though, if they could get him here late first. You're looking for that guy opposite Cameron Jordan to really, just have another guy on the other side where Jordan's playing at an all-pro level. You need that pressure off the other edge. I think Davenport to the Saints would be a nice fit. Are you still looking for my tweet?
No, there is some form of breaking news, and I'm trying to nail it down. It looks like Richard Sherman has been either cut or traded or something along those lines.
So this breaking news is going to be really old by the time people hear this.
Yeah, it is.
But we're going to break it right here on the PFF NFL show. Some breaking news music, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
I don't know if we have it. Let me know what happens with Sherman.
Now
I'm intrigued.
I'll keep my eyes peeled.
I don't know how I can focus, but your darling is coming up next in the mock draft here. Josh Allen, the guy that has wooed you this entire offseason.
Look.
He has turned you from, you thought he was a step above Hackenberg, to now you think he's a top 10 guy. He won your heart at the Senior Bowl. He won it even further at the Combine with that 75-yard pass.
No,
Tell me about Josh Allen of Wyoming. I put him in Pittsburgh.
Look, I said all the way through this. In fact, I think Ben Stockwell was the first person to say this, but I liked it enough that I stole it unashamedly and have been using it since. He is what people claimed Christian Hackenberg was, which is a big bag of quarterback tools. And Hackenberg wasn't even that, which is why we thought he was this undraftable prospect, because there was nothing to work with. It was just a bad quarterback. But Allen is. He's everything that people said Hackenberg was. He's got the stature, the size, the arm, all of this stuff. He looks like an NFL quarterback. He just hasn't put it all together on the field, at least this season. A year ago, he was far closer to that. And, people blame the receivers, the supporting cast, all this sort of stuff at Wyoming. I also don't think the offense helped him, even though, ironically, it appeared to be entirely built around his arm strength. But when you got to the Senior Bowl, I thought, not just in the game, where he was fantastic, but throughout the week of practices, I was impressed. One, I thought he was more accurate than he'd shown in the past, which is a big thing. Two, I was impressed by his ability to go through reads and to come off, hit the right guy, understand where he should go, hit the backside dig, one of those things that Marcus Mariota was always his big thing.
Yeah, he was really good at it. Really, really good.
Allen showed that kind of stuff throughout the week and then translated that into a fantastic game during the game itself. The Combine, I wasn't particularly motivated either way by him at the Combine, but that just reinforced the idea that he has this special arm talent, all this kind of stuff. I just think he has the quarterback tools to be able to put together into this impressive quarterback. Now, the chances of that happening are the big variable, and that's why he goes somewhere at the back end of the first round to me, as opposed to Baker Mayfield going number 1 overall, because, if you put all these Josh Allen tools together, maybe you end up with a Baker Mayfield, or you could just take Baker Mayfield, who was already Baker Mayfield. That just seems more logical to me.
There's a lot of logic there, Sam. But yeah, I think a lot of people with the Allen thing, you're either, like anything, everything's so polarizing. What you've just described as being somewhere in the middle, which I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with being somewhere between. I'm not comfortable taking him in the top 10, but I'm also not going to completely ignore him, because it's not just a tool. Like you said, there's been flashes on the field. He's done good things. He's made plays that look like Aaron Rodgers outside of the pocket. So, again, not to compare him directly to Hackenberg again, but there are other prospects who have done far less, I think, than Josh Allen. The difference with the problem with Allen is he still needs to improve a lot of the easy stuff. Go through the quick game. Take the check down, take the easy throws, make the easy throws, do it consistently. Don't always look for the home run down the field. I don't know if that is something that can completely be taught, but he's at least shown more than a lot of the other guys. So I put him to Pittsburgh because I do believe that it's time to get the next guy for Ben Roethlisberger. I think it's time to get the next guy for Eli Manning and the Giants, the next guy for the Chargers, that entire 2004 class. Would love to see him go to Pittsburgh and sit.
So when we ran this through our video on YouTube with the boss, Chris Collinsworth, he brought up the point that this is a move that actually is fantastic on paper, but is the kind of thing that might really piss off Ben Roethlisberger if you basically draft his replacement right now in the first round, as opposed to giving him another weapon or adding a guy to the defense who can make a big impact and chase the Super Bowl. Do you think that's the kind of thing that would actually have impact? Or because once you get those guys, those franchise quarterbacks, those guys tend to have like a fairly significant say in the personnel decisions that get made. But then you get to the situation where they're getting towards the end of their career, and at some point you have to think about the future.
Well, I think it depends on the guy. I mean, with Tom Brady, the whole like, hey, we've drafted your replacement, all of a sudden it makes Brady work harder, and it's a chip on his shoulder thing and all that stuff. Maybe Big Ben responds that way rather than being pissed off that it's his replacement. I do believe that a lot of the whole mentoring thing is BS. Sam, you're making faces. What do we have?
No, I almost got a darn Scheftered, but it didn't happen.
Oh, you can't get a darn. This is a horrible live news following here.
This isn't even a darn Schefter. This is Adam Scheftard. So that was a new one. Almost got me. Almost.
No, a darn is a lot better at this game than whoever you just mentioned.
So carry on.
Yeah, so Josh Allen to Pittsburgh, perhaps it does piss off Big Ben, but it doesn't matter. I'm picking for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm looking for the future. yes, you just deal with it. All right, couple more picks to just run through. Cortland Sutton, SMU wide receiver. I mentioned him on the Combine podcast, 6.57 3-cone at 6'3", almost 220 pounds. Really incredible. It showed up on film. I like him to the Jacksonville Jaguars, adding a nice big threat, perhaps to replace Allen Robinson, pending his leave in free agency if they can't lock him up. Taven Bryan, little 3-tech, add into the Minnesota defensive line. I think it's time for them to get a little bit younger on the defensive interior there. I think that's a good fit.
Well, they desperately need a 3-tech again because Sharif Floyd's knees appear to be completely shot.
A lot of questions there.
Tom Johnson is an impending free agent. So as good as that defense is, 3-tech has been a glaring hole for them for a while now since Sharif Floyd became this big question mark. And at least until somebody young steps into that role, they need to upgrade there.
31, I went with Isaiah Oliver, the long corner out of Colorado, to kind of step in and replace Malcolm Butler.
No, too high. Way too high.
Too high for Oliver?
Yeah.
He fits their scheme really well. He could press and run, and he just doesn't give up deep balls. He's almost like a Stephon Gilmore clone.
No?
No. You're not a big fan of Oliver. It's the lateral movement on him?
Yeah, he is that big, long corner that can press that a lot of NFL teams are looking for right now. But I think there's too many flaws in his game in terms of being able to catch guys out with quick, shifty, underneath receivers, guys that'll move laterally. I just don't like his ability yet to recover that. He strikes me as actually very comparable to the two teammates of his that came out in the past couple of seasons, Witherspoon in San Francisco and
Chidobe Awuzie.
There you go. Both of whom have played reasonably well, but both of whom were drafted in the mid-rounds. We're not first-round picks. I don't know that he's demonstrably better than either of those guys, so I don't see why you suddenly bump this guy into the first.
All right, fair. I still went with Oliver. And 32, Eagles, tough team to draft for. They're, if you're looking to fill holes, if you draft like that. But I did try to pair the value up with Jamarco Jones, who I think has some developmental tackle type of ability. Jason Peters getting old, and good fit, I think, there in Philadelphia.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Browns will also have the 33rd overall pick.
Yes.
First pick of the second round. Assuming they don't deal that to move in either direction, which is eminently possible. Who do they take with that pick, given who you've already given them? So you've given them Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, up top, and you gave them, Derwin James at 4?
Yes.
Who do they take with their second pick?
I'd be real tempted to look at Ronald Jones from USC.
Ooh.
Maybe add that speed back. Nick. I think I'd probably go Ronald Jones over Nick Chubb at this point, just for the big playability. But Chubb could be a perfect, dependable back for them right there. And then a couple corners that we've liked: Dante Jackson out of LSU, Mike Hughes out of UCF. On our board, they'd be at least in that mix. And then the guy who didn't make the first round that probably raised some eyebrows, Calvin Ridley. Maybe I overreacted a little bit to some of his combine stuff, but straight line speed still shows up on tape. He's a deep threat. Wouldn't mind seeing him in Cleveland there as well. So a couple good guys. Thank you.
Yeah, those are some interesting choices.
That'll do it. We managed, without the great Mike Renner, we managed to pull together a show. Hope you guys enjoyed the mock draft. It was mock draft 3. We'll have more in the coming weeks. Of course, get to ProFootballFocus.com for all of our free agency coverage, all of our draft coverage. And if you don't have Edge or Elite, go and check them out, ProFootballFocus.com. That's how you get your draft guide, your QB annual, your free agency guide, your player grades. We're making this fan-friendly this year, Sam. You buy one subscription product for 365 days of access to greatness.
Or you can get it for as low as $9.99. If you want to just get
Don't give them the trick. Do not give them the trick. Do not
bail. You can get it done.
So you come in. So for $9.99, you can come in, download the PDF,
grab your draft guide, and bounce.
Oh man! So we're trying to avoid letting people beat the system, but you just gave them.
Look, I'm all about I'm all about being thrifty. If you're thrifty, but you want the draft guide, that's how to do it.
All right, we put that option in there for our thrifty listeners, so you guys can also do that. $9.99. That's PFF Edge monthly. You kind of come in, steal all our products, and then bail for the month. So, all right, guys, that will do it for us today. We'll talk again next time.